Welcome back to At Home with Chatty. I am often asked, how is the market? And the data behind that question, I believe, needs to be shared. In order to make proper decisions when you're purchasing or selling, data will make all the difference and protect you and guide you throughout your real estate journey. So, I'd like to run through the counties here in Virginia. I'm going to start in Stafford County. I'm going to touch Spotsylvania County, so check out a video for that one. Fairfax County, Alexandria, Arlington County, and Prince William County as well. But I want to talk about some items that are the indicators for that answer, how the market is. So let's go through and see what exactly has happened in the last week and how that might help you make your decisions moving forward with real estate. So let's start with Stafford and Fredericksburg. I want to shout out first Universal Title for providing the information that I'm going to run through with you to help you make better decisions. They are one of the top title companies here. They are one of the places you would go when it's time to conclude your transaction and get all the closing paperwork signed. So let's go ahead and go through. They had 10 contracts that they highlighted for the metrics that I'm going to give you right now. And they're going to help, hopefully, you make your decisions. But first, let's talk about contract price. So we know contract price, it can fall in various places above list, below list, and at list. And Atlas. And so knowing what is happening in the market is extremely important for those that are about to enter the market beforehand so that you can make good decisions. So you should know that in Stafford County, as far as how many of these transactions closed at price, 40%. Higher than price or higher than list price, 40%. And then the remaining 20% was below list price. So it sounds like there were some negotiations that took place there, or a seller backed down a little bit off of their asking price. So that's contract price. Let's talk about subsidy. Those are concessions that a seller will give to a buyer to help close the transaction. These are negotiations that take place within a transaction. So out of the 10 contracts that Universal Title had, 8 of them had no seller concessions in Stafford and Fredericksburg. And the remaining did. So some folks were able to negotiate and get some seller concessions to maybe help with closing or however they use to use those credits. Let's talk about cash versus financing. Now, this makes a difference because sometimes when you have cash buyers in the market and you are a person that is using financing or getting a mortgage, your competition when it's cash is a lot more steep. There are fewer hurdles to jump over, fewer things to go through in order to get to close. And so that contract may feel a lot easier and quicker, and it is quicker primarily for that seller to get their house from list to close. And so they go ahead and take a cash buyer over someone that is financing. I do think there's some tricks that you could use or strategies you could use to get your house list ready and prepared so that the transaction can look a little bit more like a cash buyer that is coming to the table. However, let's proceed on. We'll talk about that later. So, in addition to that, we have to talk about the commission breakdown. Now, we know that buyers are responsible for, according to the contract, the standard Virginia real estate contract, buyers are responsible for paying commissions. However, oftentimes realtors will put inside of the contract on behalf of their client that they would like to have the seller, because they're coming into a lot of times a windfall of cash, to pay the real estate agents on both sides. However, that is highly negotiable and is always negotiable. So don't forget that. So let's look at the breakdown of what happened. It could be 1%, 2%, 2.5%, 3%. Out of these contracts, 2% went to 2 of the contracts and 2.5 went to the rest. And so pretty much Everyone got paid 2.5%. Realtors do a lot of hard work. Most of the work you don't see. So they are typically worth 2.5 percent or more, honestly. So that is a good indicator of what you'll have to do. So if you're thinking about selling and you're looking at your net sheet, you want to consider it's likely, since 8 of these people paid 2.5 percent commission, at least to their own real estate agent, that there may be a reality where they have to pay the same thing after negotiations to the buyer agent. But again, that's negotiable. So the next area is finance contingency. Of course, when you're getting a loan from a bank, it's going to be contingent upon underwriting. They're going to look at, your debt to income ratios. They're going to look at your credit score. They're going to look at variables to determine whether or not you can afford this loan. You may get pre-approved, but you have to go all the way, pre-qualified, but you have to go all the way to pre-approval. And that takes some time. And so, as far as how many of these contracts did it, there were 8 that were utilizing financing, and there were 2 that didn't. We know who those 2 are, the 2 that paid all cash. So that makes all the sense in the world. You don't need a finance contingency if you don't need a loan. So let's go to appraisal contingencies. Appraisals are for the lender so that they can so that they get a good understanding. They send an appraiser in for good understanding of what the value is of the home. And so, of course, the value of a home is based on proximity of 1 mile from the home, time frame being 6 months. Nowadays, even sooner, right? Because the market is what dictates what those values are, what a person will pay. But as far as appraisals are concerned, 80% of the transactions from Universal last week actually had appraisals. And of course, the 20% here, ended up not having an appraisal. And so that's not to say that just because you're a cash buyer, you don't use an appraisal to see if the value is there. Of course, someone that is purchasing a home, whether it's by mortgage or by cash, they want to know if the value is there. So let's move on. Home inspections. And you're going to see a huge variance in this when it comes to coming down south of DC all the way down to Stafford and Fredericksburg versus Arlington or Alexandria. So let's take a look at home inspections. 2 of them were waived. Now, do we want to guess who they were? They were probably the cash folks. However, we don't know for sure, but it's highly likely. But 2 were waived for home inspection, and 8 of them were negotiated for repairs. So there is some negotiation space there for buyers to ask for, at least based on this data. The market changes all the time, so keep that in mind. But repairs were negotiated. So the last piece of data I'd like to give you is majority of the homes sold, except for one, were single family, and one of them was a townhome. And so that's some information that you need to really understand how the market is. And that's how I will answer when I'm asked, how is the market? I'm going to tell you that, you're close to 40% or 40% last week. Paid list price, some paid higher than list price, up to 40%. Some paid lower. However, like I said, the market changes all the time. Let's stop there and let me let you know I do have some more information, some interpretation of some data that we got from the economists from Bright MLS to help us understand what the implications are of the metrics that are coming out, like the jobs reports and all the things that are happening in the world of economics. And so that's it for Stafford this week. My name is Chastity Richardson with Century 21 Redwood, a select company. I look forward to seeing you next time. Be sure to sign up for the class on February 8th to find out what you need to do to make sure your house sells and not sits on the market. I look forward to talking to you soon. You can reach out to me at 571-689-7474. You are welcome to text me MOVE. See you next time.